whole conversation would like to go. And before I introduce my colleague, Kerry Cassidy, I want to say that several people here have talked about Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project press conference, and I remember exactly where I was when that happened, because I was driving down a Scottish road at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and this was coming over on live BBC radio, and I was so astonished that I stopped my car to listen to it, because I didn't know whether this was a joke, and then I realized this was real. This was being streamed live, and I thought, this is amazing. This is now going to turn the world on its head. This is extraordinary what Stephen Greer is doing. I wish he was here right now, because I want to acknowledge him for that. That was an incredible thing. And then many of us waited for what was next, what was going to happen after this. Where is the Disclosure Project going to go next after this incredible public relations feat which they created? And one of the things that happened while we were waiting is that Kerry Cassidy picked up a consumer-grade camcorder that is about as big as this wine glass from what I could remember, and started going to UFO conferences to talk to them, because somebody had to do that job. And it doesn't matter whether you've got money, it doesn't matter whether you've got high technology, what you need is the intention to start talking to people, because this is a process that is ultimately all about communication, and that's all. And you're a master communicator, so I now want to introduce you with that. Tell us about Project Camelot.
Well, okay, thank you, Bill. That was a lovely introduction. Obviously, we're Project Camelot. We've been asked to come and host this panel discussion. We're actually going to sit back and just moderate. In many ways, we're not going to be speaking. But just to introduce us as the moderators, we formed Project Camelot because we met at Laughlin, and actually Bill was one of the people I interviewed. He was one of my first interviewees, if you will. And when I interviewed him on the subject of Serpo, I was very impressed by his balance, by his command of the language, by his sort of goodwill towards what I knew were probing questions that I have sort of a talent with handling, and he really rolled with it very nicely. He handled it well, and yet he was very, very straightforward, and he wasn't taking sides, other than to say that the Serpo story was something that he felt was important enough. It needed to be discussed. It needed to be understood, and it needed to be talked about, and needed to be explored and investigated. And he was there to encourage that process. And I think that in many ways, what happened when we formed Project Camelot is that we really wanted to extend what was the initial impulse of what I guess you could call the Disclosure Project initially, which was to go out, to put a camera in front of somebody's face, to ask them questions, to let the audience decide. And that's really been our mission from that day forward. We decided this in Tintagel. We really connected there. We connected with the past of King Arthur and the Round Table, and the idea of not a hierarchy, but a sort of a utopia in which all people were equal and all opinions would be listened to. And that's really what we wanted to do with Project Camelot. We wanted to allow the camera and the power of the internet to connect these people. It's been an incredible journey. We've gone all over the world. We've interviewed some of the most charming, brilliant minds, I have to say, that are here on planet Earth at this time. We've been fortunate in that way. Some of those people are sitting around the table today with us. Some are in the audience. And so it's been very exciting. It's been a lot of work, hard work. We've gotten tons of support from the audiences around the world. We want to thank all of them at the moment for that.
This is a bridge into our most recent whistleblower interview. Has not been published. We're still waiting for the okay to do that. And this is with Dr. Pete Peterson. We interviewed him, it is nearly 4 weeks ago now, and he was a man who had some extraordinary things to say. And this is now our intro into one of the main topics of this conference.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we're covering here is really disclosure. And I want to say that in many ways, what it's really all about is truth. That's what we're interested in seeking with Project Camelot, but it's also what this conference is about. We're really trying to get to the bottom of what is truth, what does it mean to be human, what does it mean to be a member of a galactic community that involves peoples and extraterrestrials, interdimensionals, all kinds of beings, all kinds of places, all kinds of levels, all kinds of dimensions. And to take that holistic view and the fact that we are multi-dimensional beings, simultaneously here and many other places. We are time travelers, all of us. We are ETs, all of us. And those are extensions of the concept. So to get back to the discussion.
What did Pete Peterson say?
One of the things that our recent whistleblower was talking about was the fact that you're supposed to talk about the story.
I'm supposed to talk about the story?
Yeah.
Okay. What Pete Peterson told us on camera is that he had heard from somebody who had already booked the time with the networks that there is to be a planned disclosure towards the end of this year by President Obama who will confirm the reality of contact with 4 or 5 or 6, we don't quite know the number, friendly ET races. And that was what he was prepared to say on record. Now, this is the kind of thing that Stephen Bassett has been waiting for the last 13 years, or longer.
Seems like 30 years, actually, Bill.
And what you've been saying on record, that Obama is going to be the disclosure president. Now, maybe none of us should hold our breaths, because it's quite a long way to hold our breath until the end of the year. And Peterson was also anxious to say that just because it's planned, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. But we believe him when he tells us that at the moment this is being slated. And there are all kinds of reasons why this might be true, because as Stephen has pointed out in his many on-record comments about all of this, America is under quite some pressure to disclose, because how embarrassing would it be for them if some other little tin pot country like Great Britain.
Tin pots? What?
I'm speaking as a Brit.
Okay, but
Or France. Supposing they get there first.
No, Bill, it's getting worse.
Before we get into name calling, I think we should start off on the question of disclosure, knowing what our recent whistleblower is talking about.
Yeah.
Could you talk about how this affects your view, and we want to hear from everybody, on whether you think this is possibly going to happen, whether you think it's not going to happen, and why, and also what are the implications if it does?
And what are the implications for exopolitics if it does? And how does exopolitics respond, etc.?
It's been my observation that when you get 25 people into a room, you have 25 separate visions of what disclosure really means. And my point is this. I think disclosure is underway and has been underway for quite a while. I do not believe that you're going to have Obama getting on national television and saying, gee whiz guys, we've got some news for you. We're not alone. We've been visited by guys from other star systems and other planets. Whoopee! And everybody gets excited, you know. They all run for the door, you know, to get it on the evening news. That's not the way it's going to happen. Now, that's my view, you know, and I'll be first to admit that it could happen that way, although I doubt it. But, you know, that you cannot come out on the TV and say, oh, looky, we've known this for years. We've kept it from you because we didn't think you could deal with it. But now we're going to level with you and tell you the truth. Isn't that nice?
Okay.
And it's like that opening the Pandora's box.
This is where we start to get some really interesting reactions from people. So already people are leaning forward in their seats because they want to
contribute. You're not going to get a disclosure like that. Recognize that it is underway, it's taking place, it's been underway for some time, and it's the form of subliminal education. When I made a presentation some time back at Laughlin, Nevada, I spoke about the 3 Stephens and the apocalypse. And this one...
I was the apocalypse.
This was one of the 3 Stephens that I spoke about. Stephen Greer, Stephen Bassett, and Steven Spielberg. And I also gave the definition of the Greek word apocalypse, which is not at all what most